This is genuinely absurd, as the latest update coming from a reporter states that Matt Ishbia and Brian Gregory in the Phoenix Suns could be interested in one specific player that is a restricted free agent out there on the open market. And even though this player would make sense for the Phoenix Suns to go and pursue to bring into this team for this new culture and new identity for Jordan Ott, ultimately, I don't think that there's a plausible way for the Phoenix Suns to get this done. So we're going to dive in and explore why this move would make sense for the Phoenix Suns, but ultimately why I also believe that it's not going to be possible for this team this upcoming off season. We'll be getting into all of that and more on the latest episode here on Suns Digest. I am your host, Bruce Veliz, and you guys have been absolutely fantastic, showing your love and support down below in the comment section, letting me know your thoughts on this Phoenix Suns team, and I really do appreciate all the words that you guys do have to say. So let me know the latest on this video revolving around this player for the Phoenix Suns here, and if you guys would be interested, or if you think it's even possible as well for the Suns to get this done. Like I said, we do go live here on Thursdays, and today is Thursday, so we will be live at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific to go over the Suns Summer League as they have officially wrapped up their 4 games and to go over anything else revolving around the Suns in the newscape that comes out before then. But without further ado, let's dive in and get into today's video at hand today. So make sure to grab that snack and let's explore this talk, as ultimately, when I saw this report kind of come across my page today, my initial reaction was, this doesn't really make sense for the Phoenix Suns. And even though it would help them and maybe put them in a better seat, I ultimately do not think this is going to be a possible move for the team. And as we see, the latest here coming from Jake Fisher from his Substack with Mark Stein is that the Suns are currently one of the teams that are now interested in a guy in Jonathan Kuminga. And he has obviously been one of the high topic discussions of the last couple of days and weeks, as he is not signed with the Golden State Warriors yet as a restricted free agent. And teams are interested in trying to pry away Jonathan Kuminga, and it does seem like he does want to leave Golden State. But ultimately, Golden State wants to get the value that they feel is worthy in a Jonathan Kuminga sign-and trade, and that's something that could cause an issue with the Suns, which we'll get into in a little bit. But from the report, we do see the sources say that Phoenix Suns, meanwhile, are the latest team to express their exploratory interest in Jonathan Kuminga via a sign-and trade. The challenging as it would be for the Suns to make such a deal happen is obviously they're fresh off the Bradley Beal buyout with having the money to sign a contract in a guy in Jonathan Kuminga, but obviously it would be a little bit difficult for the Suns to be able to do this with the contracts they do have. Brett Siegel also reported this as well on his latest post, but one of the contracts that the Suns would have to use is a guy in Grayson Allen that ultimately the Warriors don't necessarily need or want. We also see from John Gambadoro here as well that he says he wouldn't say no on this with the Phoenix Suns being interested, as the Suns have liked Jonathan Kuminga for a while. We all know with the trade revolving around Durant to the Warriors at the trade deadline, it involved the Suns getting Butler, Kuminga into first. That was obviously shut down by the Warriors, as Durant did not want to go there, being traded to the middle of the season. And the Suns ultimately got their deal from the Rockets here, depending on how you want to compare that and look at it. It obviously is a different story, but clearly the main thing and takeaway from that is that the Suns have had interest in Jonathan Kuminga dating back to last season, and Gambo obviously confirms that with his latest post. But he does state here in his final sentence, and this is where I kind of come with this as well in my statement, that he does not think it's likely that the Suns have this, as he puts it in their chances more in the low range here of getting a guy in Kuminga. He won't rule it out, but says it seems very unlikely. And I stated that as well, as I said, what contracts are we going to be sending to the Golden State Warriors in a sign and trade that is going to make sense not only for Golden State to accept the deal, but also feel like they're not losing value? In my opinion, ultimately, I don't think there's any contracts that are going to do so. Obviously, Jonathan Kuminga wants to get a $30 million deal. I don't think he's going to get that with the Suns. I don't think that he's going to get that with any other team across the league. But as we see with a guy in him and Josh Giddey, they're going to have to negotiate these deals and come to a little bit of agreement. With the obviously restrictions of these deals and the second aprons and stuff, teams don't want to give these $30 million contracts to players that have only not really proved themselves to be these star players yet, because they don't see that true growth potential. They could be put in a situation where they have to do a buyout similar to a Bradley Beal, similar to a Damian Lillard, similar to a Jordan Clarkson, or may present themselves with an untradeable contract when they're trying to win, and it puts them in a tough spot. Therefore, Teams like the Warriors, teams like the Bulls, are really uncertain on giving those big time deals, and I do think they will kind of come around to a deal between the $20 to $22 million range that feels a little bit comfortable for both sides. I think teams would like to negotiate roughly between $15 and $20 million. Players would like to get 25 to 30. So I do think we will see a mutual agreement between 20 and 25. So when you compare that to the Suns and look at the Suns roster and who they could potentially have to even trade for that, it doesn't really make that much sense. Even with the Suns being underneath the tax threshold now with waiving and signing Bradley Beal, there are clearly some holes in this position, in this roster, one of those being another point guard, and obviously the Phoenix Suns getting a guy in Jonathan Kuminga would not be that, but getting that power forward could be that solvent to really save this team. You then have a lineup of Jalen Green, Devin Booker, Dillon Brooks, Jonathan Kuminga, Mark Williams, with a bench of Colin Gillespie, Grayson Allen, Ryan Dunn, Oso Ighodaro / Rasheer Fleming at that backup 4, and Kaman Malawach playing that 5, with Oso playing basically interchangeable within those lineups. Then guys like Nigel Hayes-Davis and stuff like that would be on this roster. So that would result in trading Royce O'Neal and potentially Nick Richards. But ultimately, that doesn't add up to the salary that could really supplement that for Golden State, and kind of goes back to my other point here, which I state, what contracts are we sending, right? Maybe they'd want Grayson Allen. He makes roughly around 17. You send Royce O'Neal. He makes around 22. Or not Royce O'Neal, Nick Richards, because they need a backup center because they lost Kevon Looney. You add that together, that gets you $22 million. You sign Jonathan Kuminga to around a $22 million extension. Maybe that's something possible. But the Warriors also, even though they have interest in Grayson Allen, potentially, maybe, as a shooter, right, Brad Siegel said, and I said earlier, don't really want Grayson Allen, and also have another guy in Buddy Hield who's already on their roster that plays that similar role. And I don't think that the Warriors will trade for Grayson Allen when Buddy Hield's already kind of fit that system and played really well with his one season, and makes the same amount, is on a cheaper, not a cheaper contract, but a smaller contract. I believe he's expiring this year, where Grayson Allen has 3 more years locked up, where the Warriors don't get a ring with Curry with Grayson Allen, then could be stuck with Grayson Allen after that Stephen Curry kind of pushed with Jimmy Butler and stuff, and that could be some weird issues for Golden State down the line. So ultimately, in my opinion, like I've stated, I don't think there's the contracts to get this deal done, right? Even if you combine a Royce and Nick Richards together to kind of get that clog out of the power forward position, it does not add up to the amount of, it adds up to around $14 million in a sign and trade, so the Warriors would be saving money, but ultimately I don't know if that's something that is going to be possible, because I don't know if Royce O'Neal and Nick Richards add up to the value, once again, of a guy in Jonathan Kuminga to the Golden State Warriors. I do think that they want a star level type of player in return for a guy in Jonathan Kuminga, or a guy who can be a star level role type player, similar to like a Derek White kind of is for the Boston Celtics. Maybe not in that type of degree in the first season of coming in, but obviously could prove to be that type of player for them down the line. And I do think ultimately a guy in Royce O'Neal, Grayson Allen, Nick Richards don't really make that much sense for the Golden State Warriors. I do think that there'll be a team that will bring back Jonathan Kuminga, ultimately signing him on a deal that feels comfortable for them and himself, and then we'll have him play up on this contract, so at the trade deadline they can go out and use that deal to go and get the hole or need that they do need to fill within their roster to push them over the top in the Western Conference, to put them in those competing scenarios with those other teams in the West there. And I do not think that opportunity is going to present itself with the Suns. So that's why I ultimately think that this is not going to happen for the team, even though I would like it to happen, because Jonathan Kuminga, Jalen Green, Devin Booker, that is a new culture, new identity, younger players, younger stars, players you can kind of buy into going into next season, but not only just next season, but for the future of the Suns. Because if Kuminga and Jalen Green do pan out and do develop to be some of these kind of star players alongside guys like Mark Williams playing a significant role, Kaman Malawach playing a good role, you could have a team that is kind of building like the Oklahoma City Thunder, like the Indiana Pacers, where they have that one central star with a bunch of great role players or other supporting cast players that can really be beneficial for a championship push or even for a nice playoff push. So ultimately, coming away from this, I would like to see Jonathan Kuminga on this Suns team, but I ultimately do not think that they're going to have the contracts necessary to get a deal done, all due to the fact that the Warriors are not going to value, like I mentioned, Grayson Allen, Royce O'Neal, and Nick Richards to that significant value, and I do think they'll have other options in free agency once they do agree to a Jonathan Kuminga sign and trade or a sign and deal where they do bring him back to keep them in a better spot than taking those deals from the Suns. So ultimately, the Suns still will look to move those contracts, I do think, so keep an eye on those, but I don't think they'll be for Jonathan Kuminga. Let me know your thoughts on this video, your latest on the Phoenix Suns. And like I said, I will be live here at 3 p.m. Pacific for you guys, 6 p.m. Eastern for me, going over the Phoenix Suns in their summer league so far and what we can really look forward to for the Suns going into next season. But without further ado, thank you guys so much for tuning in. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Have a great rest of your day, and go Phoenix Suns. Peace out, everyone.